Welcome to Aspire to Inspire, the podcast version of my reflections on life, work, and everything in between. I'm your host, Antonio García Cancino. If you'd like to read more essays like this one, you can find them on my Substack at substack.com/@agc1988. Today, I want to talk about something that has been quietly following me, and maybe following many of us. It's a strange moment when an old version of yourself suddenly appears, an echo we thought we had outgrown. And it can happen anywhere, in a conversation, in a reaction, in a sentence that we didn't mean to say the way we did. There's something human about the way our past tries to negotiate its place in our present. And for the next few minutes, I want to sit with that, feeling gently, no pressure, just an invitation to think softly. It's interesting how it happens. You're going through your day, maybe feeling fine, maybe just moving in an automatic way, and then something tiny, a tone of voice, a memory, a comment, pushes you into a reaction that feels old. And suddenly you're behaving like the version of you from 1998, 2015, 2008, or some other moment you didn't plan on revisiting today. And when I catch myself doing that, there's always this brief pause, a small confusion, like, wait, why did that version of me show up? I thought I had moved on. Some branches of psychology suggest that the brain gravitates toward familiar patterns because familiar things feel safe, even when they're not useful anymore. That perspective made me think, maybe those old reactions aren't trying to sabotage us. Maybe they're simply the brain trying to reach for the last thing it remembers working. And it made me wonder, what if those echoes of the past are not chains, but habits? Habits that haven't learned they're no longer needed. From a philosophical point of view, the idea of the self has never been simple. Heraclitus, the ancient Greek philosopher, believed we're like a river, always moving, never the same twice. Meanwhile, figures like John Locke suggested that continuity of memory shapes continuity of identity, that who we are is, in many ways, who we remember being. Two ideas completely different, and yet somehow both feel a little true. And part of me kept asking whether our past shows up because we hold on to it, or because it still holds on to us. There's also this idea in psychology that our old emotional responses were once tools for survival, a way to be accepted, a way to avoid conflict, a way to navigate childhood or early adulthood. And the brain doesn't discard tools easily. It stores them in case we ever need them again. But what if the need for is long gone? Sometimes I think about the many versions of ourselves we've carried. The strong ones, the insecure ones, the hopeful ones, the tired ones, the versions that didn't know any better, and the versions that knew too much. It's humbling to realize that identity isn't a clean evolution. It's messy, it folds back, it repeats itself, and it may even flicker. And you know what? Maybe there's nothing wrong with that. Some traditions, like certain branches of Buddhism, see the self as something that isn't fixed at all. They say identity appears and disappears, tied to the context, emotion, and moment. And strangely, that perspective can be comforting. Because if the self isn't fixed, then neither are our mistakes, or our fears, or the parts of us we wish we could rewrite. At the same time, other schools of thought insist that our history forms the backbone of our identity, that every step we've taken is a part of a narrative that shapes our sense of meaning. Two opposing views. One says the past is fluid, the other says it's foundational. And maybe the truth isn't in choosing one, but in recognizing the tension between both. There was a moment recently, quiet, unassuming, when I reacted in a way that I didn't feel like my current self. It felt like a younger version, more defensive, more alert, more guarded. And it surprised me. It didn't match the situation. It didn't match who I believe myself to be now. I felt like I was standing in the present, watching the past perform inside my mind. Some people say that this happens because we haven't healed something yet. Maybe, but I don't always agree with that. Sometimes it's not about healing. Sometimes it's just about recognition. Maybe the past doesn't need to be defeated. Maybe it just needs to be acknowledged. When Freud talked about repetition, he described the way we reenact old emotional patterns, not because we're damaged, but because we're trying to make sense of them, to bring them into the light. And when Freud isn't the answer to everything, that idea made me pause. Because perhaps an old version of myself wasn't trying to embarrass me, but trying to remind me of something I forgot to understand. On the other side, philosophers like Kierkegaard believe that we are always in the process of becoming, and that the past can only define us if we let it. He had this idea of becoming oneself in an act of courage, a gentle one, a slow one. Hearing those two perspectives, one saying you repeat because you seek meaning, the other saying you become by choosing forward, felt oddly complementary, like two hands holding the same truth from different directions. And I found myself asking, what was this old reaction trying to protect? What part of me felt threatened, even when nothing was actually wrong? Those questions don't have answers yet, and maybe they don't need to have them today. I don't want to offer advice, and I don't want to tell anyone how to deal with their past. This isn't that kind of space. But a thought has been sitting with me. Sometimes, the simplest thing is to notice who showed up today, to recognize which version of us is trying to speak, not to silence it, not to correct it, just to see it, because every version of us, past or present, was trying in some way to help, even if it didn't know how to, even if it learned the wrong lessons, even if it grew out of fear instead of hope. Maybe noticing is enough for now, enough to soften the weight, to breathe differently, enough to remember that we are not static, we are unfolding. So, as we end today's reflection, I keep returning to this thought. Maybe the past doesn't feel heavy because it's powerful. Maybe it just feels heavy because we carried it for so long. This has been an episode of Aspire to Inspire. My name is Antonio García Cancino, and thank you for listening. And remember, the past may shape us, but it doesn't imprison us. Not when we're willing to see it with gentle eyes. If you'd like to read more, you can find my writings at substack.com/@agc1988. Until next time, let's aspire to inspire.